I moved into the apartment complex on a cold November evening, dragging 2 suitcases behind me while the hallway lights flickered with a strange rhythm that instantly made my skin crawl. The building itself sat at the far end of an old downtown block, tall, narrow, and suffocated between 2 crumbling structures as if time had forgotten it was still there. The entrance smelled faintly of rusted metal and something else, something sour like old water soaked in a rotten wood. I had signed the lease only because the rent was shockingly cheap for the area, and I needed a place fast after my previous roommate vanished unexpectedly, literally vanished, leaving everything behind. I wanted to forget that, but something about this building whispered that forgetting wouldn't be easy here. As I took my first steps inside, I heard slow, dragging footsteps echoing from the 5th floor. My apartment was on the 4th. The landlord, a thin woman with deep-set eyes and a trembling voice, warned me about only one thing. Whatever you do, don't interact with the person in 4B. She didn't explain why, and before I could ask, she shoved the keys into my hand and hurried away, walking faster than she looked capable of. My room was 4A, right next to the mysterious 4B. Perfect. Just perfect. The moment I unlocked my door, I felt a vibration, like someone pressing their ear against the wall between our apartments. My breath hitched. The wall was ice cold. I placed my palm against it, and someone tapped back from the other side. Not random. A slow, deliberate rhythm. 3 taps. Pause. 3 taps. Like a coded message. I instantly removed my hand, heart pounding, and tried to shrug it off as pipes or noise or anything else. But then I heard it, a faint whisper muffled through the wall, as if someone was speaking directly into it, my name. Illy. I froze. I hadn't told anyone my name here. I hadn't even spoken to neighbors yet. And that voice, breathy, low, and impossibly close, felt like it came from a mouth pressed directly against the shared wall. I backed away slowly, feeling the apartment shrink around me. The radiator clicked loudly, breaking the silence, and I forced myself to unpack to distract my mind. An hour later, I heard footsteps in the hallway, slow, dragging, uneven steps stopping right outside my door. I turned off all the lights on instinct. My heart thudded hard as I approached the peephole. The hallway was mostly dark except for one flickering bulb, but in that weak light, I saw a silhouette standing outside 4B. The person, or whatever it was, stood unnaturally still, head tilted toward my door like it was listening to me breathe. I stepped back, covered my mouth to silence my breathing. The figure slowly lifted a hand and pressed it flat against the door of 4B, fingers long and thin, almost too thin. Then it whispered something, too quiet for me to understand, but the voice felt exactly like the one I heard through the wall. The figure slipped into 4B, but the door didn't fully close. It remained slightly open, the darkness behind it deeper than the hallway itself. That night, while I lay in bed struggling to sleep, I heard the tapping again. 3 taps. Pause. 3 taps. But this time, something else followed, a scratching sound like nails dragging along the wall, slowly, deliberately, tracing the shape of where my head rested on the pillow. The scratching stopped suddenly, and then I heard the same whisper. Eli, don't open your door tonight. The whisper dissolved into a wet, raspy breath that seemed to seep through the drywall. My whole body tensed. I didn't know what was happening, but I pulled the covers up over my face like a terrified child. I stared at my dark ceiling until my eyes stung. Minutes passed, maybe an hour. Then, Illy. The voice wasn't behind the wall this time. It was in the hallway, right outside my door. The voice outside my door wasn't just calling my name. It was breathing into the thin slit beneath the doorframe. Each inhale long and wet, each exhale pushing tiny puffs of air into my apartment as if whatever crouched outside was smelling my fear. I didn't dare move. Even the weight of my own heartbeat felt loud enough to be heard through the wood. Then, slowly, the doorknob began to turn, not enough to open, but enough to test whether I'd locked it. The cold metal rattled gently at first, then harder, as if impatience was growing on the other side. Suddenly the sound stopped, replaced by something much worse, a sharp, sudden shift of weight like someone dropping down on all fours, followed by the unmistakable sound of sniffing, low and deliberate, dragging across the bottom edge of my door as though the thing outside was trying to inhale the scent of my skin. A thin shadow slowly stretched beneath the door, and then pale fingers, far too long, began sliding into my apartment through the gap, reaching blindly across the floor toward my feet. Before the fingers could touch the base of my bed, another door in the hallway opened, and a deep, rattling voice said, "Get back inside. You're not supposed to be out at night." The hand withdrew instantly, jerking back with an unnatural quickness, and whatever was outside scurried into 4B, leaving the door slightly ajar and the hallway dead silent again. When I checked the peephole, a tall janitor stood facing 4B, unnervingly still, his head tilted in a strange angle as if listening through the door. He then slowly turned toward me, as if sensing my eye on him, forcing me to jump back from the door in terror. I didn't see him leave. The next morning, desperate for answers, I went to the landlord, who nearly collapsed when she saw my face and immediately asked if I had heard something. When I told her what I'd seen, she grabbed my arm and whispered shakily, "Do not speak about 4B in the mornings. Not when the building is awake." When I demanded an explanation, she said, "No one lives in 4B. They never have." I told her someone went inside last night. She looked horrified and said, 4B hasn't been occupied for 6 years. It imitates people. It knows voices. It knows names. Her voice trembled when she added, "Do not answer it. Do not speak to it. Do not open your door at night." Before I could ask more, we heard the same dragging footsteps from upstairs, and she paled, whispering, "It's awake." She pushed me toward the exit, telling me to leave the building until evening. When I returned later that day, the lobby lights flickered violently and the stairwell smelled like damp soil. Halfway up, I received a text from an unknown number. "You shouldn't come back." Then another, "It doesn't like you." My legs froze on the stairs, but I forced myself to reach the 4th floor. The very second my foot touched the hallway carpet, every light went out, plunging everything into a suffocating blackness. With trembling hands, I turned on my phone flashlight and immediately spotted a tall silhouette at the far end of the hallway, standing still in the dim beam. Something else moved behind me, crawling low across the carpet with fast, hungry jerks of movement. I scrambled to my door, dropped my keys, and clawed desperately at them while the crawling thing dragged closer and closer. Just as its shadow reached me, I jammed the key into the lock, threw myself inside, and slammed the door shut. Something hit the door immediately, 3 times, then stopped. Silence. I backed away, shaking uncontrollably. Then a tapping began, not on the door, not on the wall, but on my window, even though I lived on the 4th floor with no balcony or ledge. 3 taps, pause. 3 taps. I approached slowly, breath fogging the air, and when I pulled the curtain aside, a gray hand was pressed against the outside of the glass. I stumbled back with a scream as the fingers dragged downward, leaving thick black streaks behind. Then the window fogged over from the outside, and in the vapor, glowing faintly, words formed. "Let me iron." And then, slowly appearing beneath it, "I know your voice." I froze, my fingers trembling against the cold metal doorknob, because from the other side of my apartment door came a slow, dragging sound, like bare feet scraping across the hallway floor, and I instantly knew it was coming from the direction of apartment 3B. My heartbeat hammered inside my skull as the footsteps stopped directly outside my door, and then came a faint, wet breathing, shallow, raspy, and too close, like someone had pressed their face right against the door, listening for my movement. I didn't dare breathe. Then suddenly something scratched long, deliberate strokes, up and down the wood, and I felt the vibration travel straight into my bones. I forced myself backward, step by slow step, until the scratching abruptly stopped and silence filled the apartment, so thick it buzzed. Seconds later, a soft knock tapped the door, gentle, polite, almost friendly, which somehow terrified me far more than the scratching. When I didn't answer, the voice of an elderly woman whispered through the crack, but it wasn't the frail voice I had heard on the first night. This one was distorted, layered, like 2 or 3 voices speaking at once. I know you're awake. My legs nearly gave out. I scrambled for my phone, dialing 911 with shaking hands. But before the call could connect, every light in my apartment flickered violently and then died completely. Behind the door, the footsteps began again. Only this time they didn't move away. They slowly, deliberately circled my apartment, dragging, scraping, pacing like something deciding which wall to come through. Then, from my bedroom window on the 4th floor, I heard knuckles tapping the glass. I stood frozen in the darkness, staring toward the bedroom, because the tapping on the 4th floor window grew louder, more urgent, like someone was running their nails across the glass from outside, impossible and horrifying. My breath hitched as I crept toward the room, each step heavy, as if the air itself was thickening around me. When I finally reached the doorway, lightning flashed outside, illuminating a silhouette pressed against the window, a hunched figure with limbs too long, head tilted unnaturally, its face smeared against the glass as if trying to look inside. The silhouette vanished the moment the lightning faded, leaving the room in choking blackness. Behind me, the apartment door creaked open on its own, even though I had locked it moments earlier. My stomach dropped. From the hallway came the same layered voice, quieter this time, whispering my name as if it had known me for years. My phone suddenly lit up with a notification, new photo saved. Confused, I opened the gallery, and the blood drained from my body. The newest photo was taken just seconds earlier from behind me. In the grainy image, something stood inches away from my back, its face stretched into an impossible grin, eyes hollow, its hand almost touching my shoulder. I spun around. Nothing was there. The lights flickered back on, and for a moment I thought the nightmare was ending, but then a shadow moved across the ceiling, too fast and too large to be human, crawling toward the corner above the front door before vanishing straight into the wall. I grabbed my keys and ran out of the apartment, down the stairs, out into the cold night, vowing never to return. The police later told me apartment 3B had been vacant for 11 years, ever since an elderly woman died inside under unusual circumstances. But what still haunts me is the final message I found on my phone the next morning. A voice recording I never made, the same layered voice whispering in the dark. You shouldn't have left. I know where you live now. The moment Ethan moved into apartment 7C in the heart of the city, he felt a chill that no amount of summer heat could explain. The hallways reeked of damp paint and dust. Fluorescent lights flickered sporadically, casting jagged shadows that seemed to shift whenever he blinked, and every creak of the floorboards above felt deliberate, like someone in 8B was pacing just for him, listening, watching, waiting. At first, it was subtle, footsteps at impossible hours, low murmurs that sounded like his own name, and slow scraping sounds across the ceiling that made his skin crawl. But soon, the oddities escalated. Neighbors whispered about people vanishing without a trace, apartments left empty, belongings abandoned, yet no one could, or would, explain why. Ethan dismissed it as old building quirks, until he noticed items in his own apartment subtly displaced, shadows lingering far too long in corners, and a metallic scent that clung to the air, faint but unmistakable, like rust or blood. One stormy night, a black glove appeared on his balcony, wet but warm to the touch, and the first hum began, a warped lullaby-like tune that seeped through the ceiling, faint at first, then louder, calling his name. Locking doors and windows did nothing. The whispers infiltrated his mind. Ethan, come up, threading through his dreams, twisting waking hours into paranoia. Shadows lengthened. The hallway outside his apartment seemed alive, and he glimpsed the silhouette in 8B's window at night, motionless, staring, smiling with patience that chilled his blood. As the scratching returned above, faster, more deliberate, a deafening crash shook the ceiling, revealing a black void where 8B should have been, and from it emerged a figure impossibly tall, pale, with hollow black eyes and a grin too wide for any human face, moving toward him with a deliberate slowness that magnified Ethan's terror. The apartment walls warped, Shadows twisted into grotesque shapes, and whispers inside his skull grew louder. "You belong to me now." He swung a chair, but it passed through the figure like smoke, the very air pressing against him, suffocating alive. Then the abyss above opened wider, dozens of shadowy limbs reaching down, grasping, writhing, echoing the neighbor above in countless distorted forms, dragging him toward the void, and Ethan screamed, but no sound escaped. In that final instant, he saw the horrifying truth. 8B had never been human. It was a living trap, feeding on fear for decades, patiently waiting for someone like him. The abyss swallowed him, leaving 7C eerily silent, normal in appearance but smaller, darker, imbued with the predator's presence. Days later, the building manager, smiling politely, showed a new tenant around Ethan's empty apartment. "Nice and quiet," he said smoothly. "The neighbor above? Don't worry, they never bother anyone." But as the new tenant passed beneath the ceiling, a faint hum drifted down, distorted and patient, followed by the whisper, "I've been waiting for you." The building groaned, shadows danced along the hallway, and the cycle began again. Some neighbors are predators, some buildings are prisons, and those who enter never truly leave. That night, Ethan could barely sleep, though exhaustion weighed him down. The apartment felt alive, suffocating, as if every corner, every wall, every shadow was watching him. The soft hum from 8B above had returned, louder now, warped into a distorted melody that crawled inside his mind, repeating his name like a mantra, a twisted lullaby promising dread. Each creak of the floorboards above made his chest tighten. Each whisper of air outside the door seemed like someone, or something, moving just beyond his vision. He began noticing subtle changes in his apartment. Objects shifted slightly from where he left them. A picture frame tilted, his shoes lined perfectly against the wall, a single black feather lying on the floor. He tried leaving, hoping distance would break the grip, but the building felt different, corridors stretching unnaturally, shadows moving with him, whispering secrets that made his heart pound. One evening, desperate, Ethan peered through the peephole toward 8B, and for a split second he saw a silhouette, tall, elongated, with eyes like black voids, pressing against the floor as if it had no weight, staring at him, smiling, knowing. Panic overtook him. He ran to the elevator, hitting the buttons frantically, but it stalled between floors, humming violently, vibrating under his feet as though the cables themselves were alive. From above, the ceiling groaned, splintered, and a faint scraping sound escalated to a deafening crash, sending shards of plaster raining down, and Ethan realized with bone-chilling clarity. The entity above was no longer confined to 8B. It had invaded his apartment, his mind, and his very perception of reality. That night, every reflection he saw, mirrors, windows, even his phone screen, flickered with the same pale figure, always behind him, gone when he turned. The whispers escalated, teasing, coaxing, infiltrating his thoughts. "Ethan, why do you resist? You belong to me." His sanity frayed, sleep abandoned him, and he understood the horrifying truth. The neighbor above was a predator, patient, timeless, feeding on terror, and tonight it was preparing to claim him completely. Ethan's nights had become a waking nightmare. The apartment no longer felt like his own. Every shadow seemed to twist toward him, every creak of the floorboards above a deliberate step closer, and the warped hum from 8B had evolved into a chorus of distorted voices, echoes of vanished tenants, crying, laughing, whispering his name, all layered together in a relentless symphony of dread. One stormy evening, desperate for any escape, Ethan ran toward the stairwell, only to find the corridor stretched impossibly long, twisting unnaturally, the walls bending as if alive, trapping him in a labyrinth that defied physics. From above, a deafening crash shook the ceiling, and for a split second, a gaping black void opened where 8B should have been. Out of it emerged a figure impossibly tall, skin pale and stretched, eyes hollow black pits, grin unervingly wide. moving toward him with deliberate, predatory slowness. Ethan's legs refused to move, his scream trapped in his throat as the air thickened, pressing against his chest, suffocating, alive. Shadows on the walls writhed into grotesque forms, crawling toward him like living creatures, and the whispers inside his skull became commands. "You belong to me." Frantic, he swung a chair at the figure, but it passed through, intangible, as if the laws of reality had surrendered to the predator's will. Then the ceiling split further, and dozens of shadowy limbs emerged, writhing, grasping, each one a distorted echo of a neighbor above, reaching, pulling, dragging him toward the abyss. In that terrifying instant, Ethan saw the truth. 8B had never been an apartment, nor its occupant human. It was a living trap, feeding on fear for decades, meticulously patient, waiting for someone like him to fall into its grasp. He tried to resist, but the shadows consumed him, dragging him upward into the void, the apartment walls folding around him, until the very building seemed alive, a predator swallowing him whole. And as the last shred of light vanished, Ethan realized with paralyzing horror that the entity above had claimed him completely, and the apartment returned to silence, deceptively normal, waiting for the next tenant foolish enough to cross its threshold. Days passed in silence, but the building was anything but empty. Ethan's apartment, 7C, looked normal, deceptively calm, yet the shadows lingered longer, the air felt heavier, and the faint, warped hum still echoed from above. No one spoke of the previous tenant's disappearance. The building manager smiled politely at new arrivals, showing them around as if nothing had ever happened. One morning, a young couple toured the floor, peeking into 7C, unaware of the horrors it had contained. As they approached, a chill swept the hallway, unnatural and suffocating, and a faint whisper returned, soft, patient, almost courteous. "I've been waiting for you." The couple froze, sensing something wrong, yet their curiosity dragged them closer, the shadows stretching along the walls like grasping fingers. From above, the ceiling creaked and groaned, and a dark figure emerged, not fully visible, more suggestion than form, yet its presence radiated hunger, patience, and malice. The building itself seemed alive, bending, breathing, ready to claim. The couple tried to retreat, but the corridor twisted impossibly, trapping them in a loop, the walls echoing with whispers of past victims, all warning, all doomed. And then the figure smiled, impossibly wide, and the air thickened until even thought became a cage, wrapping them in terror. Ethan's fate was sealed, his absence a silent warning. The building, patient and eternal, waited for its next tenant, its next prey, and the cycle began again. Some neighbors are predators, some buildings are prisons, and those who enter never truly leave.